This lesson will round out the things you need to know about constructors. If you remember the figure class from earlier, it was a class defined without a constructor. It looks like this. When you write a class this way without a constructor, the Java compiler inserts a constructor for you. It doesn't do anything to initialize the object, but it does fulfill the requirement that a class must have a constructor. It's known as the default constructor, and it's just as if you had written the class this way. The default constructor is always created for you unless you provide a constructor of your own. Now let's look at the circle class that extends the figure class. The code isn't shown here, but the constructor of the circle class includes code that executes the constructor of the figure class. The code is automatically inserted by the compiler. You can insert the code yourself this way. A call to super is a call to the constructor of the super class. You can insert calls to super only as the first line of code in a constructor. The compiler doesn't allow it anywhere else. In this example, no arguments were passed to the constructor, so the default constructor is called, whether it was the one you wrote or the one that was automatically generated. Okay, let's look at what happens when a class has more than one constructor. Here's a new version of the figure class that has more than one constructor. This is the same as the previous version, except this one has two constructors. The first one, the one with no arguments defined for it, is still known as the default constructor. It's called that precisely because it doesn't require any arguments. It creates a version of the object with all the default values in place. Using the other constructor makes it possible to create the object and set the area at the same time. We can extend the Figure 2 class like this. Here we have a class with a constructor that requires an argument and uses that value to set both the radius and the area. What is actually happening here is that the default constructor of the superclass is being called, which initializes the area to 0, like this. The call to super is inserted by the compiler, but things can be shortened a bit by using the other constructor of Figure 2, like this. In this form, the area information is calculated and used to make a call to the constructor of Figure 2 that accepts the area information. You could always use super this way to select whichever constructor you prefer from the super class. Oh yes, I need to mention one more thing. The Circle 2 class does not have a default constructor. Because a constructor is provided in the source code, the compiler does not insert a default constructor. A Circle 2 object cannot be constructed without a radius value being specified.